Daf Yomi, Tractate Bava Metzia, page 63a, top of the page, with the words De Misratzna Masnisin Kavase. As I resolved the Mishnah in accordance with his opinion expressed in the Brizot he edited. Rava explains, as Rabbi Yehoshua teaches in a Braita, one was owed 120 dinars by another, and he went and stood by the other's granary and said, "Give me my money, as I wish to buy wheat with it." And the other said to him, "I have wheat in my granary that I will give you. Go and calculate for me the amount to which you are entitled at the current market rate." When the time to sell wheat arrived, the lender said to him, "Give me wheat, as I want to sell it and acquire wine with the money received for it." The borrower said to him, "I have wine that I will give you. Go and calculate for me the amount of wine to which you are entitled at the current market rate." The Braita continues. Then the time to sell wine arrived, and the lender said to the borrower, "Give me my wine, as I want to sell it and acquire oil with the money received for it." The borrower said to him, "I have oil that I will give you. Go and calculate for me the amount of oil to which you are entitled at the current market rate." With regard to all such cases, if the borrower has wine and oil, the transaction is permitted, as this is a proper sale. But if he does not have these items, it is forbidden, since he cannot give him the merchandise at the current moment. If its value appreciates in the interim, he is considered to have paid an additional sum for the delay of the repayment of the debt. Rava concludes his explanation. And what is the meaning in the Mishnah of acquired? It means that he acquired it as payment for his loan. Rava said, conclude from this Braita of Rabbi Yehoshua 3 halachot. Conclude from it that one may establish repayment of a loan upon produce, meaning that a borrower can promise to pay the lender in produce over the course of a year based on the market rate at the beginning of the year. And we do not say that this is like a case where his Isar is not already come into his possession, as Rabbi Chia said in the Braita on the previous Amud. Since he owns produce, it is as though he has provided it at the present time, and the current lack of payment is not significant. Accordingly, one can conclude from it another halacha, that this practice is permitted provided that he has produce in his possession, and further conclude from it that the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yanai. This is, as Rabbi Yanai says, what difference is it to me if he referred to the produce, and what difference is it to me if he referred to the produce's value? If he stipulated that he would receive a certain amount of produce, he can later take its value in money rather than the produce itself, without violating the prohibition of interest. As it was stated that Amoraim disagreed about this issue. Rav says that one may make an arrangement of trust with regard to the delivery of items such as produce. In other words, one may loan the money in advance with the agreement that he will be repaid with produce at a later date, but one may not make an arrangement of trust with regard to money. In other words, one may not loan the money in advance with the agreement that he will receive the value of the produce at a later date, as this has the appearance of collecting interest. And Rabbi Yanai says, what difference is it to me if the agreement concerned the produce, and what difference is it to me if it concerned the produce's value? Just as the lender can take the produce and sell it himself, he can likewise accept the value of the produce directly. The Gemara raises an objection against Rav's opinion from the above brayta. With regard to all of them, the borrower has the items in his possession. It is permitted, apparently, even if he actually pays with something else. Rav Huna says that Rav says that brayta is stated with regard to a case where the lender pulled the produce himself, thereby performing an act of acquisition. The Gemara questions Rav Huna's statement. If he pulled the produce, does it need to be said? After all, there was a proper act of acquisition. Rather, the brayta is discussing a case where the borrower designated a corner for the lender in which to place the produce that he acquired. For the purposes of this halacha, such an action is sufficient. And Shmuel said, in accordance with whose opinion is this brayta, which permits the practice if the borrower is in possession of such produce, it is in accordance with that of Rabbi Yehuda, who said that uncertain interest, a transaction that may or may not result in the payment of interest, is permitted. Rabbi Yehuda holds that if at the time of the loan it was not certain that the agreement would result in the paying of interest, then even if it is so that if specific circumstances were to develop, there would be interest paid according to the agreement, the transaction is permitted. As is taught in brayta, if one was owed 100 dinars by another, and the borrower performed a sale of his field for him in order to pay the 100 dinars, if they agreed that the seller, in other words the borrower, consumes the produce of the field until the debt is repaid, this is certainly permitted. But if the buyer, meaning the lender, consumes the produce, it is prohibited, as he is in effect taking the produce as interest while awaiting the payment that he is owed. Rabbi Yehuda says, even if the buyer consumes the produce, it is permitted. The Tana relates, Rabbi Yehuda said to the sages, an incident occurred involving Baitos ben Zonin, who performed a sale of his field on the basis of a directive from Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. And that was a case where the buyer consumed the produce. The sages said to the Tana, would you bring a proof from there? The reverse was the case. It was the seller, not the buyer, who consumed the produce. The Gemara asks, what is the difference in opinion between the first Tana and Rabbi Yehuda? Abaye said, the difference between them concerns the halacha of uncertain interest. According to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, if it is uncertain that a transaction will ultimately involve the payment of interest, is permitted. Rava said the difference between them involves the status of interest taken on the condition that it be given back. Rava maintains that Rabbi Yehuda did not mean that the lender can consume the produce without payment, as he must repay the amount he ate if the borrower pays off his debt. The first Tana rules that since the sale is not yet final, his consumption of the produce constitutes interest. Amar Rava said, now that Rabbi Yana is saying